Coming up.
Yeah, so there's a fear-based thought that's really deeply rooted. You can probably put your finger on what it is that you're feeling. So you are having a thought, and it's deeply rooted. And through a life coach's, expertise, we're going to help you see what that thought is. We're going to be able to pull that out of you. But what you can very clearly articulate is what it is that you're feeling. It's some iteration of fear, which that feeling or that emotion or that vibration, however you want to name it, has you showing up in such a way, reacting in such a way that ultimately creates your results. So your thought generates the feeling that has you reacting, creating your results. That's how the mind math unfolds in every single circumstance of your life.
We have a special offer for our Munch Bunch listeners. To book a virtual consult with Megan, she's offering a discount of $25 off. Just email her, Megan, at nwmyofunctionaltherapy.com or through her website, www.orofacial-myology.com. To book a virtual consult with Kimi for the $25 off, email her mouthmusclememory@outlook.com or through the website, www.mouthmusclememory.com. Now on to the episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Munch Bunch Myo podcast. Today, you've got me, Megan Vanoy, myofunctional therapist, and my favorite co-host, Kimi Nishimoto, also a myofunctional therapist. And we have a special guest on today. Her name is Tracy Pleschourt, and she is the founder of Self-Made You. And Tracy has a really interesting background. I'll let her speak to it more than myself, but Tracy's going to chat in with us today about habits and creating habits, making habits sustainable. We talk about that all the time. My mantra for Northwest Myofunctional Therapy is transformation through sustainable habits. We obviously work with you guys on the myofunctional, the nasal breathing, lip seal, correct tongue posture, chewing and swallowing. And Tracy really can tap into the brain side of these things. And so we thought we could all come together, put our brains together and learn even more from her. So Tracy, I'm going to let you take the floor. Give us a little background on who you are, what you do, what inspired you to create this. Tell us more about your podcast as well. And I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I am the founder of Self-Made You, and I kind of like to think of Self-Made You as like that next chapter in your own personal education. A lot of us have a formal education that we, have fond memories of. And we might have graduated from that education with that missing component. And I like to provide that, or at least encourage you to look beyond what you've gotten from your education and aspire to learn how to create the results that you deeply desire in your life. Learn how to take responsibility for what it is that you're creating, the experiences that you're having, whether or not they're intentional or unintentional. Taking responsibility for it all creates a sense of control, creates a sense of power. And so that's what we teach our students how to do or what to do. And we always start with the how and why. I think teaching it through kind of this basic science and math starts to create an understanding. It's not me just talking at you and trying to teach you something. It's me applying your unique circumstances, showing you how you truly are responsible for your results for your experiences. And then once you understand that, then you can iterate, you can accept, and then you can kind of iterate. And so I simply like to say, we have created a school that helps you, teaches you how to achieve the goals and overcome the problems or the challenges in a very efficient way. And so we have a methodology that we teach. This all came to be from my years in the advertising industry. So it's a very unique route to life coaching. I was at kind of the pinnacle of my career within advertising back in 2014. And my kids were just in the early stages of high school. And I kind of had this vision of them graduating from high school, leaving the nest, and me having a whole lot of regrets about the time that I spent away from them. And at that time, although I absolutely adored my career and I have such fond memories of it, it was the perfect time for me to really spread my wings and chase the dreams that I had. And it started with going home and figuring out, how do I create an income, generate an income from something I'm super passionate about, but do it at the same time that I can really like embrace the time I have left with my kids. And so mission accomplished. That's when Self-Made You was born. And I started off really coaching other women how to create purpose-driven businesses, which morphed into Self-Made You and overcoming any challenge, any problem that you have in your life while achieving the goals that you've got for yourself.
And from what I understand as well, one of your focuses that you also do is like how to help people with the weight loss and with how to work on that hard one, overeating.
Yeah. And the reason why that one really kind of bubbles up to the top is because it's a personal challenge of mine. I really prefer to coach people on some of the problems that I've learned how to overcome. I feel like I am an expert in those arenas. So overeating and over drinking are probably the two biggest obstacles that bring people to Self-Made You. Those aren't the only topics. So we coach a lot on relationships and professional growth and, income generating, all those kind of things too. But overeating and over drinking definitely have a soft place in my heart.
Megan and I totally relate to that because we got into myofunctional therapy because we discovered we had all the myofunctional disorders. So I think you're the best teacher when you have the most experience, right?
No doubt. Yeah.
There's something about the personal story, right? And like, when you're talking to patients or clients and they're like, well, would you do this? And you're like, well, I did. Like I'm not just telling you, I'm not just talking the talk. I'm actually able to walk the walk, and I've been through it. I've done it. I have a toddler. I have a 20-month-old, and when she was born, we went through those issues, and so I helped her get treatment too. So I do think there's so much to personal story and that personal drive to really help people grow and flourish in their career. And I love that that's what you decided to do, is take a step back and kind of figure out what fuels you to then also help fuel others. And I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. Megan helped me a lot when I was starting out with Myo. It's like, I had the brain for it. I was super passionate, but I was like, I can't charge anyone. I feel bad. It's just like, no, sister, you need to charge and you need to like get paid because you're very smart and you need to make it worth your while as well. So I always joke that Megan is my Myo life coach.
Yeah. A life coach just really helps you see your own brain. It really helps you see how your thinking generates the emotions that have you showing up, ultimately creating your results. And so that's what the formula is that I teach. It's really the foundation of everything, no matter what result you want to create or what circumstance you're looking to overcome. I use what I like to call the mind math formula to really make it simple to understand, because we can put your unique circumstance in this formula. And I like to just ask you, like, what is it that you're thinking or believing, or what is it that you're feeling in the context of that circumstance? So I think, Kimi, like you said, making offers or selling, your services to a client, you had a thought, I can't charge money for this, right? I mean, why do you think that is? What's the root thought there?
Oh, I'm like not really a business person. I've
Okay.
always just like been in hygiene, where whenever it comes to selling treatment, or it's like, you need this crown, it's like I tell them all the whys, and then as soon as it comes to the money, I'm like, go talk to the girl up front. Bye.
Yeah. So there's a fear-based thought that's really deeply rooted. You can probably put your finger on what it is that you're feeling. So you are having a thought, and it's deeply rooted. And through a life coach's, expertise, we're going to help you see what that thought is. We're going to be able to pull that out of you. But what you can very clearly articulate is what it is that you're feeling. It's some iteration of fear, which that feeling or that emotion or that vibration, however you want to name it, has you showing up in such a way, reacting in such a way that ultimately creates your results. So your thought generates the feeling that has you reacting, creating your results. That's how the mind math unfolds in every single circumstance of your life. So I literally train my students to think in mind math formulas. It's so helpful because it neutralizes everything. It strips away the drama, and you start looking at facts. And when you start looking at facts, you make entirely different decisions for yourself and about your life.
So for example, with me, where it was like, I'm too scared to charge, or I'm scared to start my own business, like what would be the thought, feeling, reaction?
Yeah. So your thought is, I'm too scared. Now I'm as your life coach, I'm going to really pull out of you, like, why is that? Let's get a little bit deeper. What's the deeply rooted belief? It's really a neural pathway. It's a very well established thought that you've probably had since you were yay big. Like, it's something that's just kind of running in the background. It's very like subconscious. So maybe I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough, or I need to know more, or I'm not worthy, or it's an
fear of rejection.
I'm afraid they'll say no. Fear of rejection. So that's the thought. And we would definitely prompt and ask a lot of questions, which you can ask yourself those questions. That's what self-coaching is all about, to really get to that feeling that has you showing up and reacting in such a way. So we want to really see this clearly in black and white, because that's our experience right there. You can't argue that. When you can see your experience in black and white right in front of you, it's very difficult to argue that the mind math does not play out that way, because you see it playing out like that. And then you can see your result, and just simply ask yourself, is this the result that I want to continue to create for myself? So for women who are overeating and creating an experience of where they are unable to lose weight, they're maintaining a weight that they don't want to maintain, or they're unable to lose the weight that they want to lose, it's being driven by reactions, or their action or a lack thereof of action, which, if you back that up, the root cause is a belief that's making them feel something. So it's the thinking and the emotions that are being generated that you need to solve for. We all think the circumstance or the result is the problem. It's not. The problem that we need to solve for, the real weight is the 3 pounds between your ears. Solve for right there. So we teach the simple science and math. Neuroscience, it sounds very complex and a little scary. It's not. We all have the human brain. Part of our human brain is made up of that primitive part that's very fear-based. It has a purpose. Its purpose is to keep us safe, to keep us alive, but we're not in a lot of danger when we're standing in the kitchen, right? So it's like, gotta be able to distinguish the difference between those primitive brain thoughts and what I like to call prodigy brain thoughts, which is just simply your prefrontal cortex. And so teaching that neuroscience and how that actually plays out in your unique circumstances really gains a lot of traction for people. They buy into that when they can see their unique, specific circumstance unfolding in front of them.
I want to go into the primitive brain a little bit more. There's this podcast that I really like that's helped me quite a bit called Unbeep Your Brain by Carla Lowenthal, which I think that you took the similar training with her, I believe.
Yes.
But I really love that one. It's really good if you have a problem with making decisions, which like I'm an anxiety driven person, so making hard decisions is very difficult. So she talks about the primitive brain, but she calls it like the lizard brain, the one that's like, I want to be safe, be comfortable, do what I know. So can you talk to us a little bit about what the primitive brain is?
Yeah. So your primitive brain really has a primary job of keeping you alive. So it is avoiding pain, seeking pleasure, and being efficient. That's how it operates, with the overall mission to keep you alive. So it is always going to be forecasting like what might be around that corner up there. That's keeping you anticipating in fear, right? It keeps you very reactive. So you might have a thought when you see that chocolate chip cookie, I have to have that. Right? It might not be there when I want it, so I better eat it right now. We all have those kinds of thoughts that have us reacting. And we react before we even realize it because it's so habitual. Because remember, one of the objectives of that primitive brain is to be efficient. It feels like a habit. That's coming from our primitive brain. And so just noticing it, actually seeing that mind math play out, creates a sense of awareness, which also creates a sense of control. It also creates a sense of like, it's not who you are, it's a function of your primitive brain. So you can kind of put some space, and you don't have to make it mean anything about you. You're not broken because you're having primitive brain thoughts. You're not broken because you're reacting. It's a function of a brain that's just simply doing its job. You want to interrupt before you continue to react and create negative results for yourself.
Does that have anything to do with like childhood? Because like I grew up in a big family where you have potluck mentality.
You better get that last chicken before somebody else does.
You gotta load your plate up. You gotta get the good pieces of chicken, you know, because I grew up in a family of, there's 9 of us, you know.
Yeah.
7 kids, mom and dad, usually an uncle or aunt or 2. So sometimes it was like a rat going to load your plate up. It's like, I gotta throw all the good stuff on there. Does that play into it at all?
Absolutely. So we were brought up with indirect and direct messaging. And so for, some people, it is really helpful to kind of look backwards and kind of unwind where that messaging came from. For others, it's not. It's just like, yeah, that is a belief that I have due to indirect or direct messaging. And that, because my primitive brain wants to be efficient, it just has that well-established neural pathway. But the beauty is that our brain it has neuroplasticity. So it actually can be reshaped. We can replace those neural pathways, AKA those beliefs that were formed from indirect and direct messaging, like you better get it while the getting's good, or we don't leave food on our plate because there's starving children in other parts of the world, right? Those are all messages that we've heard. And some of us have created beliefs, neural pathways from that, and we react.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So you have the ability to replace those neural pathways because our brain has neuroplasticity. So that's the good news. It does take a little bit of practice. There is no silver bullet. It does require you to roll up your sleeves and do the work, but the work really isn't that hard. And it looks very different than most weight loss programs want you to believe. Most weight loss programs are going to hand you a sheet and say, go make sure you check every one of those boxes, which sounds like a lot of actions. It's really understanding how you've gotten to where you're at. And there is a very simple explanation. And how do we change those beliefs? How do we get to the root cause? The root cause is a belief. It's not the action. That's not the root cause. It's a cause. It's not the root cause. And if we want to solve in a sustainable way, we're going to go to the root cause.
So what would the root cause of overeating, like what's the most common root cause of overeating?
A belief that sounds like I need that, that makes you feel entitled. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's really revealing what is the belief that you are operating from. Maybe it's a belief that I've never been able to lose weight, therefore I never will. Or I'm, predisposed to diabetes, or I have a lot of overweight people. My mom was overweight, my sister's overweight, so therefore I'm going to be overweight. Right? It's like it's probably a number of beliefs that you are operating from that has you feeling defeated, maybe entitled, right? There is a root thought that's creating a root feeling that has you showing up in a way, creating a net negative, an unwanted result for yourself. It does, Kimi, it looks different for everybody, but that's the beauty of the mind math, is it reveals what you are thinking and feeling and how it has you showing up, creating a result that you may deem unwanted, net negative. Don't like this, not working for me.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because that's a lot of what we talk about too, like is in the myofunctional therapy space, as far as like proper breathing, lip seal, tongue up, chewing and swallowing. It's getting to the root cause of why this dysfunction happened in the first place. And then what can we do about it? How can we integrate that into your day to day? And then how can we integrate those sustainable long-term habits? So it's interesting to kind of hear that from another perspective, or put that another lens on that also could apply to other parts of people's life, whether it's, weight loss or habit forming, or, kind of that roadmap to finding your purpose.
Right.
It's cool to see that in all the different ways.
Healing relationships, like climbing the corporate ladder, if that's what your goals are.
We want to introduce the Spot for Tots course, a parent's guide for toddlers ages 2 to 5 for Mini Mayo. We have Megan and Kimi going over nasal hygiene, myofunctional exercises, breathing exercises, tongue tie healing protocols, and then we have Jenny June going over sleep hygiene, and Kelsey Baker going over feeding therapy and body work. The course is $297, and the link will be in the description.
It was funny because when you said the entitled thing, I was like, who's entitled with food? And then I realized I am. I've always had like a pretty good metabolism, even though I ate kind of like a garbage rat. But I always think to myself, that line in Parks and Rec where they're like, treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
That is probably my thing, would be treat yourself.
Yeah. We teach people, I have kind of what I call the 4 basics of change. And often, like I said, a lot of people that come through our doors, they're wanting to lose weight. And I like to teach the bigger picture, like metabolic health, metabolic fitness, and allow weight loss to really become a byproduct of becoming metabolically fit, because I feel like that's like the value add that most people don't know they need. But that creates longevity and it has a touch point on your mental and emotional health as well. So But those 4 basics are solving the mind math. Number 1, I mean, that is the foundation to everything we teach. Then secondly, eating the foods that fuel you. And because I am very kitschy and I like to think of myself as creative, Self-Made You teaches the 4 basics of knowing yourself, SELF. So the S is solving the mind math. The E is eating the foods that fuel you, uniquely fueling you. And it looks different for everybody. The L is learning how to collect data so that you make your decisions from data, from facts. Because when you don't have the facts, when you don't have data to make decisions from, you lean into drama. It very much looks like dramatic thoughts. And then the F is fasting, intermittent fasting, to lower your insulin so that you have a much better chance of becoming more metabolically fit, to becoming insulin sensitive and not resistant. But I will say the whole reason why I brought that up is because fasting also reveals a lot of feelings. And so the minute I start to say, and I'm going to teach you how to intermittent fast, a lot of people feel resistant or restricted. And that's beautiful, because that gives us fodder for the mind math. If you're feeling resistance or you're feeling restricted, why is that? Because you have a belief. And that belief sounds something like, oh, no, I will die if I don't eat, right? Like, or you're not going to take the food away from me. Like, I'm a human being and I need food to survive. Well, you don't need food every hour like we are taught, or you don't need breakfast as the main source to start your metabolism. Like, there's so many myths out there, but I will say that those feelings give us fodder for teaching the mind math. And so I just thought of that when Kimi, when you said, in what ways are you entitled? A lot of people think that they're entitled to eating every 20 minutes because food is readily available. Like that belief, if you're somebody who's struggling with weight, I promise you that belief is not serving you. And sometimes we just need to put it in black and white to see that.
Yeah. And grandma said that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Right.
But if you count those calories, breakfast does take up a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, brunch is definitely my favorite type of meal.
Mine too. But it doesn't.
I'll give up dinner before I give up brunch.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
So, what is intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting is simply just extending the time in between your meals. And intermittent fasting is not like the extreme fasting that you hear of. You'll hear people going days, sometimes months of, with just water. Intermittent fasting is usually right around that like 15, 17 hour mark without any food, without raising your insulin. And you would know that if you were collecting the data. I teach people how to monitor their blood glucose. So when your blood glucose spikes, then you are technically breaking a fast. And so, and you can deduct from a raised blood glucose that insulin has also been spiked, which is the technical definition of breaking your fast. But we teach people to go about 15 to 17 hours in between meals or without food, keeping their insulin levels really low. That's how you can start to tap into metabolically. That's how you start to tap into fat as a source of energy. And that's when you lose weight in a really sustainable way, is when you're using the energy that is stored on your body. On mine, I'm storing it on my hips and thighs. And so my body is like dining in. I'm not using what it is that I'm eating. It's dining in. It's using the energy that is stored on my body in fat, as a source of fat for its fuel. And that's exactly what you want it to do. You want to become a fat burner and not a sugar burner.
So 15 to 17 hours, like what would be like a typical one? Because when I've done it in the past, and I actually really like intermittent fasting because I'm not a breakfast person, so I just have coffee. would it be like that lunchtime to dinner window, and then after dinner you're donezo?
It could be. I like to just, everybody's fasting when they're sleeping, right? If you're sleeping, you're not eating. So
Right.
I think the easiest place to start is just to extend it on those two bookends of, when at bedtime and, when you wake up, extend your fast. So you can either, extend it before you go to bed. So if you normally stop eating at 7 o'clock, maybe you're stopping your eating at 5 o'clock. So you would have an earlier dinner. So you're not eating after 5 p.m. And then if you think about utilizing the time where you're sleeping, and then, at 5 a.m. is now 12 hours, and you want to get up to 17, you're going to add another 5 hours to that to get to 17 hours. So now you're not going to eat until 10 a.m. in the morning. So 5 p.m. to 10 a.m. gives you 17 hours. Not that hard, right? We really think about that. And you can still eat the foods that you enjoy, but now I'm going to teach you how to eat the foods that fuel you. So what does that look like? And we can look at data in that way, but we can also kind of look at our emotional and our emotions. How are we feeling? What's our energy level? Like, let's look at the foods and how the cause and effect of what it is that we're eating. And let's start to choose those foods when we are eating. And that's what it looks like to have your own back, to really make good decisions about the food that you're eating and the results that you get from them, and then incorporating intermittent fasting.
Yeah. And so then having that kind of discipline or having that mindset, how does that translate into kind of other habits and other areas in your life? So you're working through those things, but you've got some of these anxiety habits like biting your nails or some of that negative self-talk, or how does that kind of translate into some of this other kind of habit forming stuff that we do?
Yeah, I think that, from a hormonal standpoint, what insulin is a hormone. And so when you are intentionally trying to keep your insulin levels low, which is normally what you're doing when you're incorporating food for fuel and fasting, that absolutely has a big effect on your moods, on your energy level. Those two things have a big effect on your communication, on your decisions, on how intentional, how aware you are. If you have very little, if you're not present, if you're not mindful, if your moods are all over the place, if you feel like you can't get off the couch, it makes changing a habit quite difficult.
Yeah.
Energy, more awareness of what's actually going on, if you're present, makes it so much easier. So I would say, that is how it directly relates. And then I would say learning how to self-coach, really understanding what it is that you're thinking and how that thought makes you feel and how you show up, how you organically show up. You don't even have to try. You can, in retrospect, see how that feeling had you showing up. That awareness is absolutely everything. Without awareness, you can't iterate. You can't change. With awareness, the control lies within you. So those are the two correlations, I'd say, to changing a habit.
Yeah, I agree with that because a lot of times with my clients, they tend to wolf their food. They don't necessarily chew well.
No chewing.
So that's one of the conversations that we have as we are working through the chewing and the swallowing and working on the tongue thrust is, how are we chewing? Are we going 50-50 and chewing on both sides at the same time? And are you chewing until it's mushy, or are you just letting it go right down the hatch?
Are you setting a timer? Are you being intentional at your meals? Are you being present, or are you answering emails, watching TV, and eating bites in between?
Right. Right. Yeah. And I would argue, being intentional is at the mental level, right? But yet it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of, self-command, self-control to stop running on autopilot, which is that primitive brain and that's what your primitive brain was created to do. It doesn't want to use a lot of energy. So it's very habit. It does take energy to command that prodigy brain, to trip that trigger of your prodigy brain, to get mindful, to be present, to, follow controls or some, I'm all about frameworks. So I always have, I tell my clients, my brain is not a vault. It is a processor. So I use frameworks to remember things, and that works really well for me. But I still have to trip the trigger to go to the framework, to follow that process. And I've just taught myself over time, I build in little cues to make things easier for myself. You got to find what works for you, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's so true for, kind of how we work with patients too, is we talk so much about the awareness piece. I tell them, that's half the battle, not just doing the exercises, not just going through the motions. Like that is half, if not more of the battle, is actually being aware of what we're doing and making those adjustments throughout the day as needed, until that is the new kind of incorporated way of life. We don't even like to call it a habit. Like, and that is just who you are now.
Exactly. Yep. And it's very possible to strengthen. You kind of have to have that springboard, that starting point. And then I like to have some evidence that you can point to, this is me.
Yeah, I like that.
The person who, and that first step is the all important step right there. Where most of us are always looking at that kind of finish line, that last step.
Yeah.
That's not the most important. The most important is like that very first step, because now we've got the evidence that we can point back to. And I'm becoming that person who, puts that process into play and who is learning how to be happy along the way of, and recognizing that this is a process, that all the feelings that I think I'm chasing, those are all feelings that are available to me right now to make this process way more enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, jinx, Megan.
I know. We're jinxing a lot today. I really love the mind mapping. I love the mind map, the framework. I think it's can go so many directions, but I'll really come back down to like who you are as a person, who you want to be as a person, and how can we get there. And I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. And also I think what's interesting is like the emotional and the thought parts of the overeating and some of the dysfunction, because sometimes we're just, this is how I am and this is how I have always been and how everyone in my family is. It's hard to look in the mirror and to be like, there are things that I can control and there are things that I can do. It's just do I want to?
Right.
Yeah. And that translates to what we do too, right? Like we hear all the time, like, oh, I have my dad's mouth, or, oh, I have my mom's teeth, or, oh, everybody in my family snores, or, oh, we all needed braces, or, oh, and like same in my family, right? Like that's same thing. But we're just because we're all alike, doesn't necessarily mean that we can't all make different individual changes too, for that kind of best self that we really want to be. Like the cards don't always have to be stacked against, and then figuring out why we feel like they always are stacked against, and then kind of dissect that, do the mind math from there, if you will.
Exactly. I mean, those are all thoughts that everything that you just said, Megan, those are all thoughts, but yet we believe those as if they're truths,
right?
And they're not. That's the mistake that we make. We believe those as if they are true, and those are thoughts that if we just investigate those thoughts and just see what that thought is actually creating for us, we would see it's not working for us. But yet nobody takes the time, or I shouldn't say nobody, but most often we don't slow down enough to recognize that our results are directly related to a very deeply rooted belief that if we didn't take the time to reveal, we would just keep on rinsing and repeating and creating the same results for ourselves. But every one of those thoughts that you just gave me are very worthy of putting in to a mind math to get very honest with yourself and see how that thought is serving you.
Yeah, or like journal if it's too uncomfortable to say it out loud or to talk to someone, even just writing it down in a journal and kind of putting into words how you feel has been really helpful for me. And like, why am I doing this destructive thing? Or why am I acting out right now? It's like there's usually some sort of traumatic thing or an emotional trauma that happened at some point in my life, and that's why I'm behaving that way. But in the moment, I'm like, that has absolutely nothing to do with this. But then when I go back and I journal about it, I can kind of break down why I did what I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that understanding usually provides a level of acceptance, which allows you to kind of take that next step. You kind of get beyond that confusion, and you can accept it and now take that, what's the next best step? So yeah, the mind math formula and the instructions on how to use it, I have that on my website. It's a totally free resource that just takes you step by step. So yeah, if you want to understand that more, you want to take any of those thoughts that you think are truths, quote unquote, or, facts, put it in the mind math model and just see how that's actually working for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then your website, self-madeu.com.
Yep.
Right?
It's the letter U, not YOU, the letter U.com.
Letter U. Yeah. And I popped on the website just to kind of see, and it's super great, super easy to get to. And then you also have your own podcast, right?
I do. Yep. It's called Secrets of the Self-Made. And so currently we just feature our students, but I also am on a lot of different podcasts that, has a deep focus, a very purposeful focus on unique audiences. So I like to really kind of shine a light on those hosts. So we always take little snippets of the podcasts that I've been on, and those go into the Secrets of the Self-Made. And then we always, of course, link it back. But it's neat because yesterday I was on the podcast of a divorce attorney and just walking through how to use the mind math for these women and men who are going through divorce, so it really is applicable to no matter what the circumstance is. And I think that can really be valuable when you hear it and you see it through different lenses. So yeah, that's kind of my other big passion project is that podcast.
Yeah. We get that.
I know you do.
We get the passion project. So people can find you on your website, the self-made letter U. They can find you in the Secrets of the Self-Made podcast. What are you on social media as well?
I am on Instagram under Self-Made U. We have the Student Union, which is a private but free Facebook group. I'm on TikTok. I do a lot of free coaching on TikTok. So pretty much every social media platform, thanks to my sister who does all of my communications. She's got me out there everywhere. So yeah, we're hard not to find, I think.
Perfect. Yeah. And it's just Self-Made letter U, Self-Made U. I think it's so cool how what we do also intersects with what you do, right? Really the basic at its core, habits, self-worth, breathing, and just kind of being in the moment is stuff that we touch on so much. But just seeing it through another lens, I think is so cool too. So, Kimi, any more questions before we wrap it up?
No, thank you for being on the podcast. And it was so good to have your perspective because it's a little bit different, but it still blends. So thank you. And thanks for all the good work that you do, empowering people that we can change and you deserve to change.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yes. So of course, you guys, if you want to find us, you can find us at the Munch Bunch Mayo podcast. You can find Kimi and I both on social media. I am at NWMFT. Kimi is at Mouth Muscle Memory. And keep reaching out to us. We've been getting a lot of great feedback and messages lately about your experiences listening to our episodes. And so keep sharing the love with us because it really helps us keep going too. So we will catch you all next time. Again, Tracy, thank you so much. We are looking forward to learning more and diving into Self-Made You.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.